Jake had always been the kind of guy who believed in what he could see and touch. At 32, he spent his days fixing computer problems and his evenings watching old movies on his couch. His life was simple, predictable, and exactly how he liked it. He lived in a small house in Portland with a neat little garden where he grew tomatoes that made him proud every summer. Tuesday night started like any other. Jake was washing dishes after dinner when something bright flashed outside his kitchen window. At first, he thought it was lightning, but the sky was clear. Then came a sound like thunder mixed with music, followed by a crash that shook his whole house. Jake grabbed a flashlight and rushed outside. His heart sank when he saw his tomato plants. They were completely destroyed, crushed under something that definitely wasn't from around here. In the middle of his garden was a small crater, still glowing with soft blue light. Steam rose from whatever had landed there. As Jake got closer, the steam cleared, and he froze. This wasn't a meteorite or space junk. Something was moving inside the crater. Something big. A figure slowly stood up from the glowing pit. Jake's mouth fell open. She was tall, much taller than him, with skin that seemed to shimmer between silver and deep blue like moonlight on water. Her hair moved as if it was underwater, flowing around her shoulders without any wind. But it was her eyes that made Jake's knees weak. They looked like they held entire galaxies, deep and endless and absolutely not human. Jake wanted to run. Every sensible part of his brain screamed at him to get back inside and call someone, anyone. But then he noticed something that stopped him cold. She was hurt. Dark liquid that sparkled like crushed diamonds was seeping from a wound on her side. She pressed one hand against it, and Jake could see she was in pain. Their eyes met across his ruined garden. Jake expected to feel afraid, but instead, something strange happened. Words appeared in his mind, not heard but somehow understood. They weren't in English or any language he knew, yet he understood them perfectly. Please. The voice said inside his head, gentle and musical. I mean no harm. I am injured. Jake found himself walking toward her before he could think about it, up close. She was even more incredible. Her skin seemed to glow from within, and when she breathed, tiny sparkles of light danced around her. Despite her otherworldly appearance, there was something about the way she carried herself that reminded Jake of royalty from old movies. You're bleeding, Jake said, surprised by how steady his voice sounded. She looked down at her wound, then back at him. Not bleeding, as you understand. This is life essence. It will heal. But I need rest and safety. Jake knew this was crazy. He knew he should be calling the police or the military or someone much smarter than him. But looking at her standing there, injured and alone in his backyard, he couldn't just walk away. Can you walk? He asked. She nodded, but when she took a step, she swayed dangerously. Without thinking, Jake moved to support her. Her skin was warm and seemed to pulse with gentle energy. She was surprisingly light for someone so tall. My house, Jake said, nodding toward his back door. You can rest there. Getting her inside was like helping someone who was half asleep. She leaned heavily on Jake as they made their way through his kitchen and into the living room. His couch suddenly looked very small next to her tall frame, but she sank onto it with obvious relief. Jake hurried to get his first aid kit, though he had no idea if human medical supplies would help an alien. When he returned, she was examining her wound with long, graceful fingers. I can guide you, she said, her voice still speaking directly into his mind. Your hands, combined with my knowledge, can help the healing. What followed was the strangest 20 minutes of Jake's life. Following her mental instructions, he cleaned the wound with warm water and applied pressure with clean towels as he worked. The sparkly substance gradually stopped flowing, and the edges of the wound began to glow softly. You have gentle hands, she said, and Jake felt warmth spread through his chest at the compliment. What's your name? Jake asked as he worked. I'm Jake. I'm called Zara in your language. In my own tongue, it means she who guides the light between stars. Jake paused in his work. That's quite a title. I'm what you might call a queen, Zara said. And Jake could hear a note of tiredness in her mental voice. Though right now, I am simply someone far from home who needs help. As Jake finished tending to her wound, Zara explained her situation. She ruled over a group of worlds in a distant part of space. There had been trouble. A rebellion among some of her people who wanted to make war instead of peace. She had been forced to flee when they tried to capture her. Your world appeared in my ship's navigation system as I searched for somewhere safe, she said. I did not expect to crash, but my vessel was more damaged than I realized. Jake sat back in his chair, trying to process everything. An alien queen was sitting on his couch, talking to him like they were old friends. It should have been terrifying, but instead, Jake felt oddly calm. There was something about Zara's presence that made him feel peaceful. Are you going to be okay? Jake asked. Zara's galaxy-deep eyes looked at him with something that might have been surprise. You are concerned for my welfare. This is unexpected. Of course I'm concerned. You're hurt. Most beings, when faced with someone from another world, feel fear or curiosity about what they can gain. You feel compassion. Zara tilted her head, studying Jake's face. This is why my instincts brought me here. You have what my people call harmonic resonance. You create calm in the space around you. Jake didn't know what to say to that. He'd never thought of himself as particularly special. Zara's eyes began to droop. I must rest now. The healing requires sleep, but it leaves us vulnerable. In this state, we can only truly rest near those we trust completely. Jake looked around his small living room. You can stay here as long as you need. I'll keep watch. You would do this for a stranger. You're not really a stranger anymore, Jake said, and he meant it. Despite everything impossible about this situation, talking with Zara felt natural. Like conversations with an old friend, Zara smiled, and when she did, her whole face seemed to glow brighter. Thank you, Jake of Earth. Your kindness will not be forgotten. As she settled back on the couch, pulling one of Jake's blankets around her tall frame, Jake moved to his favorite chair. He planned to stay awake and keep watch, but as Zara drifted off to sleep, he felt that same peaceful calm washing over him. The last thing Jake remembered before dozing off was thinking that tomorrow was going to be very different from any day he'd ever lived before. He had no idea that this was just the beginning of the most amazing friendship of his life. Outside, Zara's crashed ship slowly dissolved into particles of light, leaving no trace that anything unusual had happened in Jake's backyard, except for the destroyed tomato plants and the alien queen sleeping peacefully on his couch, breathing softly as starlight danced across her skin. Jake slept better that night than he had in years, watched over by someone from the stars who had found exactly what she needed in the kindness of one ordinary human being. Jake woke up to the smell of something that definitely wasn't coffee. His eyes snapped open, and for a moment, he forgot where he was. Then he saw Zara sitting gracefully on his couch, looking much better than she had the night before. Her wound had completely healed, leaving only a faint silver mark on her skin that looked more like jewelry than a scar. Good morning, Jake. Her voice appeared in his mind, warm and musical. I hope you do not mind. I was curious about your morning ritual. Jake looked toward his kitchen and saw steam rising from his coffee maker. But the steam was glowing softly. Blue. He rubbed his eyes, wondering if he was still dreaming. I attempted to improve your beverage, Zara said, and Jake could sense something like embarrassment in her mental voice. Perhaps I should not have tried. Jake got up and walked to the kitchen, Zara following behind him with fluid steps that barely made a sound. His coffee maker was working perfectly, but the coffee inside glowed with gentle blue light. Jake poured a cup and took a careful sip. It tasted like the best coffee he'd ever had, warm and rich with hints of something that reminded him of starlight. This is amazing, Jake said. What did you do to it? I simply encouraged the beans to release their full potential, Zara replied. On my world, we believe all things have hidden qualities waiting to be awakened. Jake poured a second cup and offered it to Zara. She held it delicately in her long fingers, studying the dark liquid with curiosity. Your people drink this every morning, she asked. Most of us do. It helps us wake up and start the day. Zara took a small sip and her eyes widened. It is bitter. yet pleasant. Like many things on your world, it is more complex than at first appears. Jake called in sick to work, knowing there was no way he could concentrate on computer problems. When an alien queen was sitting in his kitchen, his boss wasn't happy, but Jake didn't care. Some things were more important than debugging code. They spent the morning like old friends catching up. Zara was fascinated by everything in Jake's house. She studied his television with the wonder of someone seeing magic, laughing with delight when Jake showed her cartoons. The sound of her laughter was like music boxes and wind chimes mixed together. Your people create stories with moving pictures, she said. This is wonderful. On my world, we share stories through direct mind contact, but this allows for so much creativity and surprise. Jake found himself telling Zara about his life, things he rarely talked about with anyone. He told her about his job, his quiet routines, and how sometimes he felt lonely even though he preferred being alone. Zara listened with complete attention, her galaxy-deep eyes focused on his face like every word mattered. Loneliness is something I understand well, Zara said when Jake finished talking. Being a queen means making decisions that affect millions of lives. Everyone looks to me for answers, but no one simply talks with me, until now. What's it like? Jake asked, ruling over different worlds. Zara was quiet for a moment, staring out Jake's window at the ordinary suburban street. Imagine if every choice you made could bring peace or war to entire planets. Imagine knowing that your people depend on you, but also knowing that some of them plot against you because they think they know better. Jake could hear the weight in her mental voice, years of responsibility and pressure that would crush most people. That sounds incredibly hard. It is. And the hardest part is that I can never truly rest. A queen must always be alert, always ready to defend her people. Zara looked back at Jake. Except last night. When I slept near you, I felt something I have not experienced in decades. What was that? Complete peace. Your presence creates what we call a harmony field. It is rare to find someone with this gift, especially someone who shares it so freely. As the day went on, Jake noticed that Zara seemed to get tired more easily than he expected. She would be animated and curious one moment, then suddenly look drained the next. When he asked about it, she explained that recovering from her injuries required more than just physical healing. My people need deep rest to fully restore ourselves, she said. But as I told you, we can only achieve this state near those we completely trust. It was mid-afternoon when Zara finally asked the question that would change everything between them. Jake, she said, her mental voice softer than usual. Would you think me strange if I asked to rest beside you? Not in any inappropriate way, but simply to share the peaceful energy you create. Jake felt his heart skip a beat, not from attraction, but from the simple trust she was showing him. Here was someone who ruled over worlds, asking him for something as basic as a safe place to sleep. Of course, Jake said, whatever you need. His bedroom suddenly felt very ordinary with Zara standing in it. She looked around at his simple furniture and basic decorations with the same curiosity. She'd shown everything else. This is where you rest every night, she said. It feels like you. Calm and steady. Jake pulled back the covers on his king-sized bed, grateful that he'd bought the bigger size after his last roommate moved out. Zara settled on top of the blankets, her tall frame fitting perfectly on one side of the bed. Jake hesitated for a moment, then lay down on his side, staying on top of his own blankets. Is this okay? He asked. It is perfect, Zara replied, and Jake could feel the gratitude in her mental voice. What happened next was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. As they lay there, not touching, but sharing the same space, Jake felt a warmth spread through his entire body. It wasn't physical warmth, but something deeper. Like every tense muscle in his body was finally relaxing for the first time in years. Zara's breathing became slow and steady, and Jake found his own breath matching hers without thinking about it. The afternoon sunlight streaming through his bedroom window seemed softer, more golden than usual. Even the sounds from outside, cars passing and neighbors talking, became like a gentle lullaby. Thank you, Zara whispered in his mind as she drifted toward sleep. This gift you give me is beyond precious. Jake wanted to say something back, but he found himself getting drowsy too. There was something about Zara's presence that made him feel safer and more relaxed than he'd ever felt before. As he closed his eyes, he wondered if this was what she meant by harmony. They slept for 3 hours, and Jake woke up feeling better than he had in months. Every ache in his back was gone. His mind felt clear and sharp, and he had more energy than he'd had since he was a teenager. Zara was already awake, sitting up and looking at him with wonder. "You feel it too," she said. "The harmony affects you as well. This is even more rare than I thought." "I feel amazing," Jake said, stretching and marveling at how good his body felt. "Is this what you needed? More than needed? This is what I've been searching for without even knowing it." Zara's mental voice was filled with something Jake couldn't quite identify. "Jake, what we shared today, this connection, it is not something that happens often between any two beings, let alone between different species." As evening approached, Jake found himself dreading the moment Zara would have to leave. He'd grown used to her presence, the way her voice felt like music in his mind, and the incredible peace that surrounded her. "Will I see you again?" Jake asked as they sat together watching the sunset through his living room window. Zara was quiet for a long time, and Jake worried he'd asked too much. Then she turned to him with a smile that lit up her entire face. "Jake of Earth," she said, "if you would welcome me, I would very much like to return tomorrow evening. This harmony we create together, I believe it could help both of us in ways we do not yet understand." Jake felt his heart lift. "I'd like that very much." As full darkness fell, Zara stood and walked to Jake's back door. "Until tomorrow, my friend." Jake watched from his window as she stepped into his backyard and simply vanished, like she'd never been there at all. But the warmth in his chest and the lingering sense of peace told him it had all been real. For the first time in years, Jake went to bed excited about tomorrow. Jake spent the entire next day thinking about Zara. At work, he caught himself staring out the window, wondering what she was doing among the stars. His coworkers noticed his unusually good mood and the fact that he seemed to have boundless energy. But Jake just smiled and said he'd gotten a great night's sleep. As evening approached, Jake found himself cleaning his house and checking his appearance in the mirror. He felt silly doing it, but he wanted everything to be perfect for Zara's return. He wasn't even sure she would come back. Maybe yesterday had been just a one-time thing, a moment of kindness between strangers that would fade into memory. But as the sun began to set, Jake heard a soft humming sound in his backyard. He rushed to the window and saw something incredible. Where his destroyed tomato plants had been, the air itself seemed to shimmer like heat waves. Then, as if she was stepping through an invisible doorway, Zara appeared. She looked different than the night before. Instead of the simple flowing garments she'd worn when injured, she now wore what could only be described as royal clothing. Her outfit seemed to be made of captured starlight, shifting and flowing around her tall frame. On her head was something that might have been a crown, though it looked more like crystallized moonbeams floating just above her hair. "You came back," Jake said as he opened his back door, unable to keep the joy out of his voice. "I promised I would," Zara replied, her mental voice warm with happiness. "Though I must admit, I was not entirely certain you would want me to return." "Are you kidding? I've been looking forward to this all day." Zara stepped into Jake's house, and immediately the space felt different, more peaceful, more alive somehow. She was carrying something in her hands, two objects that glowed softly in the dim light. "I brought gifts," she said, holding them out to Jake, "tokens of appreciation for your kindness." The first object looked like a small crystal cube, no bigger than Jake's thumb. When he touched it, it began to pulse with gentle warmth. "This is a climate harmonizer," Zara explained. "Place it anywhere in your home, and it will maintain perfect temperature and air quality. Your people call it air conditioning, but this works by encouraging the air molecules to find their most comfortable arrangement." Jake turned the little cube over in his hands, marveling at how something so small could do so much. "This must be incredibly valuable. All technology should serve to make life more comfortable," Zara said simply. "This is basic equipment on my world." The second gift made Jake's eyes widen. It was a plant, but unlike any plant he'd ever seen. It had silver leaves that seemed to capture and reflect light, and tiny flowers that looked like miniature stars. As Jake watched, the plant began to emit a soft, musical humming. "This is a harmony plant from my homeworld," Zara said. "It responds to emotions and creates sounds that promote peace and healing. I thought it might help you sleep better when I'm not here." Jake was speechless. These weren't just gifts, they were pieces of another world, proof that his friendship with Zara was real and important to her. "I don't have anything to give you in return," Jake said, feeling embarrassed by the simple ordinariness of his life. "You give me something far more valuable than any object," Zara replied. "You give me peace. Speaking of which, I hope you do not mind, but I was hoping we could share our harmony time again today." Jake felt warmth spread through his chest. "I was hoping you'd want to. But first, Zara was curious about human dinner customs." Jake ordered pizza, and watching Zara experience her first slice was like watching someone discover fire. She examined each ingredient separately, tasting the cheese, the sauce, and the crust with the focused attention of a scientist. "This is remarkable," she said after finishing her first slice. "Your people have learned to combine simple ingredients into something that brings joy. It is not just food, it is comfort." "Wait until you try ice cream," Jake said, and Zara's eyes lit up with curiosity as they ate. Zara told Jake about her day. She had returned to her royal duties, settling disputes between different worlds and making decisions about trade agreements that affected billions of people. The weight of responsibility in her mental voice was clear. "Today I had to decide whether to allow mining on a moon that is home to creatures your people would call space whales," she said. "The minerals are needed for medical equipment that will save lives, but mining would destroy their breeding grounds." "What did you choose?" Jake asked. "I found a third option. We will develop new technology that can extract the minerals without disturbing the creatures. It will cost more and take longer, but some decisions cannot be about efficiency alone." Jake marveled at the complexity of Zara's life. His biggest decision that day had been whether to have a sandwich or leftover pasta for lunch. "How do you handle so much pressure?" he asked. "Until yesterday, I did not handle it well," Zara admitted. "I carried the stress in my body and my mind, but today, even when facing difficult choices, I remember the peace I felt with you. It helped me think more clearly." After dinner, they moved to Jake's bedroom for what Zara had started calling their harmony hour. This time, the experience was even more powerful than the day before. As they settled onto the bed, Jake on his side and Zara on hers, the room seemed to fill with gentle golden light. Jake felt the now familiar warmth spreading through his body, but today it was stronger. Every muscle relaxed completely, and his mind became perfectly calm. Next to him, Zara's breathing became deep and steady, and Jake could sense her letting go of all the day's worries and responsibilities. "This is what I needed," Zara whispered in his mind as she drifted toward sleep. "In all the galaxy, there's no healing technology that can do what your presence does for me. It helps me too." Jake whispered back, "I haven't felt this peaceful since I was a kid." As they rested together, Jake found himself thinking about how strange and wonderful his life had become. 2 days ago, he'd been just another guy living a quiet, ordinary life. Now he was best friends with an alien queen, and somehow that felt like the most natural thing in the world. When they woke an hour later, both felt completely refreshed. Zara sat up and looked at Jake with something that might have been amazement. "Jake," she said, "I must tell you something. What we share, this harmony, it is not common even among my own people. Most beings can only achieve this level of peace through years of training and meditation. Yet with you, it happens naturally." "What does that mean?" Jake asked. "It means you have a gift that is rarer than any royal bloodline or advanced technology. You create a space where others can truly rest, truly heal. This is why I must ask you something." Jake felt his heart speed up slightly. "What? Would you be willing to make this a daily tradition? I know it is much to ask. You have your own life, your own responsibilities, But if you would allow me to return each evening, I believe it would change both our lives for the better." Jake didn't hesitate. "Yes, absolutely yes." Zara's smile could have lit up the entire room. "Then we have an agreement. Each evening, when your sun sets and the stars appear, I will come to you. We will share our day, share a meal, and find peace together. It's a deal," Jake said, extending his hand for a handshake. Zara looked at his outstretched hand with curiosity, then grasped it gently with her own. Her skin was warm and seemed to pulse with gentle energy. "This is how humans seal agreements?" she asked. "One way," Jake said. "It means we trust each other." "Then I am honored to shake hands with you, Jake, of Earth." As Zara prepared to leave that second evening, Jake felt completely different than he had the night before. This wasn't goodbye. This was see you tomorrow. They had created something special together, a daily ritual that would anchor both their lives. "Until tomorrow, my friend," Zara said as she stepped into his backyard. "Until tomorrow," Jake replied. And this time he watched calmly as she disappeared into whatever magical transportation brought her to and from the stars. Jake went to bed that night not just excited about tomorrow, but feeling like he finally understood his purpose in life. He was the person who could give an alien queen the one thing all her advanced technology couldn't provide: simple, genuine friendship and a place to truly rest. The harmony plant hummed softly on his nightstand, and Jake fell asleep to its peaceful melody, already looking forward to another day in his wonderfully strange new life. 3 weeks into their nightly tradition, Jake's life had transformed in ways he never could have imagined. He woke up each morning feeling energized and happy, tackled his work with newfound confidence, and spent his days looking forward to Zara's evening visits. The harmony plant hummed peacefully on his kitchen counter, and the climate harmonizer kept his house perfectly comfortable. But most importantly, he had found a friendship deeper than any he'd ever experienced. However, Jake was starting to notice that other people were beginning to pay attention to his changed behavior and the strange lights that appeared in his backyard. Every evening, Mrs. Patterson, his elderly neighbor, had been watching from her kitchen window for the past week. She'd lived next door for 15 years and prided herself on knowing everything that happened on their quiet street. The mysterious blue lights and the fact that Jake suddenly seemed 10 years younger had caught her attention. "Jake, dear," she called over the fence one Saturday morning as he tended to his garden. "I've been noticing some unusual activity at your place in the evenings. Are you having electrical problems?" Jake paused, his hands full of weeds he'd been pulling. He'd been dreading this conversation. "Just some new lighting I've been experimenting with, Mrs. Patterson. Nothing to worry about." "Well, it's very bright, and it makes such strange humming sounds. Maybe you should have an electrician check it out." "I'll look into it," Jake said, forcing a smile. "Thanks for your concern." But Mrs. Patterson wasn't the only one who'd noticed changes. At work, Jake's boss, Mr. Rodriguez, had called him into his office the previous Friday. "Jake, I have to ask," Mr. Rodriguez had said, leaning back in his chair. "Have you been taking some kind of vitamins or supplements? Your productivity has gone through the roof, and you seem different, more confident, more creative in your problem solving." Jake had laughed nervously. "Just been getting better sleep lately, I guess." "Well, whatever you're doing, keep it up. But I have to ask about all the sick days you've been taking for times in the past 3 weeks. That's not like you." Jake had used sick days whenever he felt he needed to process something particularly intense from his conversations with Zara, or when she'd shared especially heavy burdens from her royal duties. "I'm fine now, sir. It won't happen again." The truth was, Jake had been struggling to balance his normal life with his extraordinary friendship. How could he explain to anyone that he spent his evenings counseling an alien queen through galactic political crises? Who would believe that his daily naps with a being from another world were changing his entire outlook on life? Things came to a head on a Wednesday evening that started like any other. Zara arrived at sunset, but Jake immediately sensed something was wrong. Her usual graceful calm was replaced by visible tension, and the lights that normally danced around her seemed dimmer. "Jake, she said as she entered his house. "We may have a problem." "What's wrong?" Jake asked, leading her to the living room. "My advisors have been growing concerned about my daily visits to Earth. They believe I am becoming too attached to this world, to distract it from my duties." Jake felt his stomach drop. "Are they right in some ways?" "Perhaps," Zara admitted, settling onto the couch. "I find myself looking forward to our time together more than my royal obligations. When I am making difficult decisions, I think about what you would do, how you would approach the problem with kindness and common sense." "That doesn't sound like a bad thing," Jake said. "My people do not agree. They think human influence is making me weak, too emotional in my decision-making." Before Jake could respond, something extraordinary happened. The air in his living room began to shimmer, just like when Zara arrived each evening. But this time, multiple figures began to materialize. Jake's mouth fell open as three beings appeared in his modest living room. They looked nothing like Zara. These beings seemed to be made of constantly shifting geometric patterns, their forms changing from triangles to squares to complex shapes Jake didn't even have names for. When they spoke, their voices felt like sharp angles cutting through his mind. "Queen Zara," the lead figure said, its mental voice cold and formal, "you have ignored our requests for an audience. We have come to retrieve you and end this inappropriate attachment." Jake felt overwhelmed by their presence, where Zara brought peace and warmth. These beings radiated criticism and judgment. The harmony plant on his counter stopped humming and seemed to wilt slightly. "Advisors," Zara said, rising to her full height. Jake had never seen her look so regal and commanding. "You forget yourselves. I am your queen, not your prisoner. A queen who has abandoned her responsibilities for the company of a primitive being," the second advisor said, its shape shifting aggressively. Jake wanted to protest, but the advisor's harsh mental voice continued. "This human has made you soft, compromised your judgment. You delay important decisions to rush to this backward planet for meaningless social interaction." "Meaningless?" Zara's voice rose, and for the first time since Jake had known her, she sounded angry. "You call friendship meaningless? You call finding peace and clarity meaningless?" "We call it a distraction," the third advisor said. "The Consortium Council has been discussing a vote of no confidence. Your recent policies show too much concern for individual welfare and not enough focus on efficiency and order." Jake felt like he was watching a family argument, but one that could determine the fate of entire worlds. He wanted to defend Zara, to tell these geometric beings how wrong they were, but he felt completely out of his depth. "My policies have been more successful than any in our recent history," Zara said, her mental voice steady but fierce. "Crime is down across all member worlds. Trade disputes have decreased by 60%. Rebellions have nearly disappeared because people feel heard and valued. Success that comes at the cost of your dignity," the lead advisor replied. "You spend your time with a being who cannot even communicate properly, whose technology is thousands of years behind ours. What could you possibly learn from such a creature?" That was when Jake found his voice. The word creature sparked something protective in him. "Hey," Jake said, standing up. The advisor's attention turned to him, and he felt like he was being examined under a microscope. "Zara isn't learning from me because I'm advanced or special. She's learning because sometimes the best solutions come from looking at problems differently." "The primitive speaks," one advisor said dismissively. "Yeah, I'm primitive," Jake said, his anger building. "I don't understand galactic politics or advanced technology, but I understand friendship. I understand that everyone, even queens, needs someone they can trust completely. And if that makes Zara a better leader, then maybe you should be thanking me instead of insulting me." The advisor's geometric forms shifted rapidly. A sign Jake was learning meant agitation or surprise. "Furthermore," Zara said, stepping closer to her advisors, "Jake has provided counsel that has improved every major decision I have made in the past 3 weeks. His perspective has helped me find solutions that serve both efficiency and compassion. Impossible," the lead advisor said. "What wisdom could this being possibly possess?" "The wisdom of someone who chooses kindness without being ordered to," Zara replied. The wisdom of someone who sees the value in simple peace and genuine care for others. The wisdom of someone who reminds me that leadership is about serving others, not controlling them. The argument that followed was unlike anything Jake had ever experienced. The advisors spoke in rapid, sharp mental bursts that gave him a splitting headache. They showed Zara images of council meetings, statistics about her recent decisions, and what appeared to be formal complaints from other galactic leaders. But Zara stood her ground. She defended not just her friendship with Jake, but her new approach to leadership that prioritized the well-being of individual citizens over abstract efficiency measures. Finally, the lead advisor delivered what sounded like an ultimatum. You have 7 of your Earth days to end this attachment and return to proper royal behavior. If you do not, the council will vote on your fitness to rule. Many already question whether a queen who befriends primitives can be trusted with galactic security. Then let them vote, Zara said quietly. I will not abandon the first true friendship I have had in decades for the approval of those who have forgotten what leadership truly means. The advisors' forms shifted one final time before they began to fade away. 7 days. Your Majesty, choose wisely. After they disappeared, Jake's living room felt empty and cold. Zara sank back onto the couch, looking more tired than Jake had ever seen her. I'm sorry, Jake said. This is my fault. If I hadn't known. Zara interrupted firmly. This was bound to happen eventually. My advisors fear change, even positive change. They have forgotten that true strength comes from connection, not isolation. But what if they're right? Jake asked. What if I really am holding you back? Zara looked at him with those galaxy-deep eyes, and Jake saw not doubt, but absolute certainty. Jake, she said, these 3 weeks with you have made me a better queen than I have been in 20 years. If my people cannot see that, then perhaps they need a different kind of leader than they think they do. That night, their harmony hour was different. Instead of peaceful rest, the first night after the confrontation with the advisors, Jake waited in his backyard until dawn. Zara didn't come. He sat on his back steps, staring at the empty sky, wondering if he would ever see his friend again. The harmony plant inside his house had stopped humming completely, and even with the climate harmonizer, the air felt heavy and sad. The second night was even worse. Jake barely slept, checking his window every few minutes for any sign of the familiar shimmer that meant Zara was arriving. By the third morning, he was starting to accept that their friendship might be over. Maybe the advisors had convinced her that he really was just a distraction from her important work. Jake tried to go back to his normal routine, but everything felt wrong. Food had no taste, his favorite movies seemed boring, and even his job felt meaningless. He realized just how much Zara's friendship had changed him, and how empty his life felt without it. On the third evening, just as Jake was about to give up hope completely, he heard something that made his heart race, multiple shimmer sounds, like several beings arriving at once. Jake rushed to his backyard and saw not just Zara, but 3 other figures materializing in the space where his tomato plants used to grow. Zara looked tired but determined, still wearing her royal clothing, but with something new, a necklace that seemed to be made of captured starlight. The beings with her were unlike any Jake had seen before. One was tall and willowy with skin like tree bark and hair that moved like leaves in a breeze. Another looked almost human, but with eyes that held the depth of oceans. The third seemed to be made of crystal, refracting light into beautiful rainbow patterns. Jake, Zara said, her mental voice filled with warmth and relief, I have brought friends who needed to meet you. The tree-like being stepped forward first. I am King Thorin of the Forest Worlds, he said, his mental voice like wind through branches. I have heard much about the human who brings peace to our galaxy's greatest leaders. I don't understand, Jake said, looking between the assembled alien royalty in his modest backyard. The ocean-eye being smiled gently. I am Queen Marina of the water systems. Like Zara, I have been told by my advisors that I am too soft, too concerned with individual happiness over efficiency. They said I needed to be more like other rulers, more distant from my people, and I, said the crystal being, am Emperor Prism of the Light Worlds. My counselors have long told me that my friendship with a simple crystal farmer on my homeworld is beneath my station. Jake looked at Zara, beginning to understand. You found others like us? I found others like me, Zara corrected. Leaders who have been told that caring about individuals makes them weak. That friendship and compassion are luxuries rulers cannot afford. King Thorwin nodded, his bark-like skin shifting in what might have been a smile. When Zara told us about her friendship with you and how it had improved her leadership, we realized we were not alone in our struggles. The advisors and councils across the galaxy have been teaching the same lesson for generations. Queen Marina added that, to rule effectively, one must rule from isolation, making decisions based only on numbers and efficiency. Emperor Prism's crystal form caught the light as he spoke. But Zara's recent policies have been studied throughout our systems. Crime down, happiness up. Conflicts resolved through understanding rather than force. We wanted to see the source of this change. Jake felt overwhelmed. But I'm just a regular guy. I haven't done anything special. You have done something extraordinary, Zara said, stepping closer to Jake. You have shown that simple human kindness and genuine friendship can make leaders better, not worse. You have proven that rest and peace are not weaknesses, but sources of strength. King Thorwin looked around Jake's ordinary suburban backyard with wonder. This place, this simple garden where you and Zara share your harmony, has become legend among those of us who believe leadership should serve life, not control it. Which brings us to why we are here, Queen Marina said. Zara faces a choice that could affect all our worlds. Her advisors have demanded she end her friendship with you or face removal from power. But we have come to witness something different, Emperor Prism added. Not the end of a friendship, but the beginning of a new way of thinking about leadership across the galaxy. Zara stepped into the center of Jake's backyard, and suddenly she seemed even more regal than usual. Her voice, when she spoke both aloud and in their minds, carried the authority of someone born to rule. I, Queen Zara of the Kepler Consortium, do hereby make this declaration, she said formally. I will not abandon the friendship that has made me a better leader and a better being. I will not return to the isolated, emotionless style of rule that my advisors demand. Jake felt tears forming in his eyes as he realized what Zara was risking. For their friendship, furthermore, Zara continued, I propose a new position within the consortium structure. I will serve as the first galactic ambassador to Earth, maintaining my role in major decisions while building bridges between our worlds, and exploring new approaches to leadership, based on compassion and genuine connection. The three visiting rulers began to glow brighter. A sign Jake was learning meant excitement or approval. We will support this proposal, King Thorwin said immediately. The forest worlds vote in favor of this new approach. The water systems agree. Queen Marina added, we have seen the results of Zara's new policies, and they benefit everyone. The light worlds will also support this change, Emperor Prism declared. It is time for a new era of leadership. Jake could hardly believe what he was hearing. You're really going to change how an entire galaxy is governed because of our friendship. Not because of our friendship, Zara said, walking over to Jake and taking his hands in hers. Because our friendship proved that the old ways were wrong. Connection makes us stronger, not weaker. Rest makes us wiser, not lazier. Caring about individuals makes us better leaders, not worse ones. 6 months later, Jake's life had settled into a routine that would have seemed impossible before he met Zara. She still came every evening at sunset, but now their harmony hour had evolved into something even more meaningful. They didn't just rest together. They planned together, dreamed together, and worked together to build bridges between their worlds. Jake had become something unprecedented in galactic history, a human advisor to alien royalty. His insights into human nature, his simple approaches to complex problems, and his natural ability to create peace had become valuable resources for leaders across multiple star systems. The Harmony Plant now sang every evening when Zara arrived, and Jake's backyard had become an unofficial meeting place for progressive galactic leaders. Mrs. Patterson had stopped complaining about the lights. When property values in the neighborhood skyrocketed after Earth was designated as the first planet in the Friendship Initiative. "Do you ever regret it?" Jake asked one evening as they lay together during their harmony hour. The familiar golden warmth surrounding them. "Regret what?" Zara replied, her mental voice constant and peaceful. "Giving up a normal royal life for the strange friendship with a human." Zara was quiet for a moment, and Jake could feel her considering the question seriously. "Jake," she finally said, "before I met you, I thought strength meant standing alone. I thought wisdom meant trusting only myself. I thought leadership meant making hard choices without feeling anything about them. And now I know that real strength comes from connection. Real wisdom comes from listening to different perspectives. And real leadership means caring so much about your people that you're willing to find better ways to serve them, even if those ways seem impossible." Jake smiled in the golden light that always surrounded their resting time. "So that's a no on the regrets?" "That's a no on the regrets," Zara confirmed. "Besides, who else but you would think to solve a galactic trade dispute by suggesting everyone take a nap and talk about it afterward? Hey, that worked." Jake laughed. "It worked because you understand something most beings spend lifetimes trying to learn. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply be present with someone and let them rest." As the stars appeared in the sky above Jake's backyard, visible through the special clear dome Zara had installed to protect their evening meetings, Jake reflected on how wonderfully strange his life had become. He was still just a guy who fixed computers and grew tomatoes, but he was also the human who had helped prove that friendship could change the galaxy. The Harmony Plant hummed its evening song. Alien dignitaries prepared for tomorrow's peace summit. In his living room, and his best friend from the stars settled in for another night of the most important tradition. In either of their worlds, simply being there for each other. Some things Jake had learned really were universal.